It's the final word World Cup Daily Day 8. Adam Collins and Ben Jones here at Eisenhower Park in New York on Long Island, where we've seen another great game. Ben, tell us about the Netherlands and South Africa in 30 seconds.
It's all been about the pitch here in New York, but today it was about the bit between your ears. It was all about pressure, it was all about tension. South Africa win the toss, have a bowl, and Netherlands succumb pretty quickly to some early wickets. It was the Marco Jansen show. Wickets, catches, drops. It was all ablaze in Marco Town. Engelbrecht scraps around for a bit, gets to 40 odds. Netherlands make 103. Simple chase, surely. No, not the case. Run out off the first ball, confusion between de Kock and Riza. Logan van Beek bowls an absolute doom seed to Riza Hendricks. Markham follows soon after. Klaassen follows soon after. Stubbs and Miller, two big ego pumpy boys, strength and power boys, turn off their egos for an hour, knock it around into the outfield. This ground, the land of the three. Slow outfield, running between the wickets. They get them within striking distance, and then Miller, as he always does, goes hard in the penultimate over. Done.
Wow, I can't believe we've taken 8 days to get you on. That had a lot of thought and a lot of insight within, well, probably 45 seconds, but that's okay.
I'm taking that. That's my best yet.
South Africa get the job done with 7 balls to spare. At one stage, they were 12 for 4. When Pringle takes that catch in the outfield, now we've said it before, I think we said it when they won their first game, the way this Dutch team believe in themselves, my sense was that when Engelbrecht was batting towards the end and got them over 100 with Logan van Beek, that crucial partnership of 54, remembering they were stuffed as well, they were about 66 for 6 from memory, they were in a world of pain with 5 overs to go. They had the better of the last 5, albeit with a slightly mad 20th over where the Bartman took 3 wickets to finish with 4 for fuck all, as he did, broadly speaking, in his first game a few days ago against Sri Lanka when they won here as well. But that little period of play gave them that boost of confidence. That's, I think, all they needed, Holland, because of their bowlers. Like I said on Twitter before, that it feels like I'm watching an Australian club team go about it. They're just relentless. They are roaring all day. They're celebrating wickets. They're probably sledging the shit out of the opposition in doing so. There's an energy about them, and they've been at these World Cups before. I know I'm repeating myself from previous days, but the memory of coming here and winning games like this, beating South Africa before, I'm actually surprised they didn't win it. I think from one point there, when I think South Africa found themselves at the halfway mark, needing to go at 8 or thereabouts. Yeah. But they were 2 overs away, but that happens to be when the game changes. The 11th over and the 13th over both went for 13. That was the point when they decided to bring Vikram on for an over. We might come back to that. Yeah. And it does slip away despite Paul van Meekeren bowling a beautiful maiden in the 16th over to give them some hope. But ultimately, David Miller, you described it well, he's an ego boy, he's a big boy, he's a strong boy, he's an experienced boy, and that's the reason South Africa get the 2 points.
You're so right about the attitude of the Dutch, not the kind of aura that they exude. It sounds strange to say about a side that we don't get to see that much of, but when they were whacking it around at the end of the innings and scrabbling up to a target, it felt like they're scrabbling up to 150. The way they were kind of fighting for it, you're thinking, oh, they're banging the game, and then you look at the scoreboard and they've just pulled out the third digit. They're really not on a total, but there was something about they were chest out, they were confident, and they start like an absolute, like a barrel of snakes. It's unbelievable. I mean, I think that it almost speaks to the mentality between the different groups. South Africa, unbelievably talented, but time and time again we've seen them cause problems for themselves with the way they've approached things. What we're seeing already in the second half of that innings was that there's a couple of new boys in there, namely Tristan Stubbs, who is probably the most talented player in this generation coming through for South Africa, alongside Dual Brevis and a couple of others. Okay. You're looking at a guy who there has actually shown a bit of temperament there, and that was what you needed in the face of this Dutch side, who are, as you say, up in your grill. Yeah, they were so disciplined with the ball. They were so controlled with the ball. They were playing to the pitch. They were playing to opposition strengths. There was a couple of jaffers in there, but it was mainly just not giving an inch. Like very few extras, all of that. Yeah. But then in between balls, it was snarling. It was pressure. It was up. They were up and about, as you would say. It was a cracking game of cricket between two quite different cricket teams.
I mean, the power play, South Africa are 16 for 4 at the end of it.
It's their lowest ever in T20 cricket.
I did see that. I mean, it's unbelievable to think that a South African lineup that's so strong. Markram strangled down the leg side for a duck. You talked about the chaos of the Quinton de Kock run out and the absolute seed of a delivery to pick up, who was it? Hendricks, wasn't it? Van Beek in his first over. And then they've got, down the other end, they've got a bowler, Vivian Kingma, who took a great catch to get them over the line a few days ago in a tougher situation where they needed to, well, it wasn't a tough situation in a game sense, but like they just needed to keep their shit together.
Well, those are the games that you build a campaign on. Right. In some ways, you can talk about it, you can flip it another way. This is when the Dutch World Cup actually starts. Right. You're expected to beat Nepal, you're expected to lose to South Africa, however much recent success you've had.
Sure.
Now they've got 2 games against Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, where if they win one of them, they're in with a massive puncher's chance of going through, and if they win both of them, they're going to go through.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll talk a little bit about Sri Lanka and Bangladesh at the end of the podcast. I neglected to mention this would take in that as well. But he finishes with 2 for 12, I think it is. Made his international debut over a decade ago. Starved of opportunities, typically used as a depth bowler. But, bowling overs 1, 3, 5 and 7, job done. Bowling, you don't see that too often in T20 cricket. But being able to slot into this side, and again, you see the passion, the celebration, the determination to make his presence felt. It's their calling card. And I'm sure a lot of that comes down to Scott Edwards being the captain as well, the school of cricket that he's been brought up playing. And it is rubbing off in this team, I'm sure of it. And, in terms of what they might do in these last 2 games, I think they will win one of those 2. I wouldn't be surprised if they win both of them. I don't think that Bangladesh was overly convincing last night. Sri Lanka are already broadly gone. They've lost their first 2 games, although they could get through on that run rate. It makes those games massive in this Group D.
I mean, just to touch on Kingham, I think it kind of summed up the approach of the Dutch, whereas South Africa were very much what we've seen work at this venue so far is just hitting that back of a length. They've got a bit of extra pace, bit of extra of that kind of nip from that kind of 7-8 metre length that we heard the Canadians talking about yesterday. But you're doing it with Henrik Nortje bowling 150 clicks. So you can see why South Africa pulled their lengths back. They barely hit the stumps. I think Janssen only bowled two balls that would hit the stumps all day. One of them took the wicket. So they were very, very disciplined. Whereas the Dutch were a little bit fuller. They're a bit slower as an attack. I know they've got enough pace, but King was not express. But they're just targeting the top of the stumps. It's classic red ball bowling in a form which doesn't normally reward it, on a pitch that hasn't normally rewarded it. Normally you've been wanting to try and avoid it. But it was a much better pitch today. We should say that. We should make that really clear as well. Especially with an eye to tomorrow. All of our metrics at Crate Beers, all of the basic stuff that we're seeing, seeing guys actually be able to lace balls through the cover, sit back and ping people over mid-wicket. It was a much better wicket. They've rolled the hell out of it. They've done everything they can to get this to be a more traditional pitch, and I think they've just about got away with it in time for the big one tomorrow. Sorry everyone, but that is the focus.
Because there is the option to use the freshie, isn't there? They could bring that up, say pitch 3 across the square. That I was looking at it earlier through the binoculars. Like there is enough time for that pitch to be ready, but they won't risk it now, right? Because that pitch did play truly.
It did, and it was quick. It wasn't Nortje was getting it through, Van Meeken was getting it through, Rabada was getting it through. If you have a bit of nit, it was rewarding it. There was only one from Bartman which kind of spat, but there wasn't any of those ones that we've seen in the first 3 games where it's rolling the fingers down it and it's died along the floor. There was none of that, so you could trust it. It wasn't quite sit back and try and pull everyone, but it was closer to traditional cricket.
I mean, fair dues. We've barely talked about the South African quicks in terms of what they achieved. They bowled 25 dot balls in the Netherlands power play. They were 20 for 3 after 6 overs, and they were going absolutely nowhere. Then Nortje gets a wicket straight after the power play. I picked up this series of stats from CricBuzz. He's now played, this is Nortje, he's played 12 T20 World Cup games, 26 wickets at 8.6 at an economy rate of 4.99. I mean, I don't think anyone's got a more beautiful set of numbers in World Cup tournament play than him as a fast bowler.
Both of those are the best for any bowler, pace or spin. As long as you've got 20 wickets to your name. Yeah, he's absolutely outrageous in this. He's got a similar kind of thing to Hasaranga, where if he gets the opportunity to play against the slightly lower ranked nations, he's just got that bit of X factor that they're just not used to seeing. They're not used to seeing completely high pace and wrist spin like Hasaranga. So it's really interesting to just see that kind of slight mismatch. But he is a supremely talented bowler. With my Delhi Capitals hat on, he had a frustrating season off the back of a really, really long and troublesome injury, and it's great to see him starting to bowl with confidence and bowling with heat as he has been since he returned. But he's just such a fun bowler to when he gets going. Running in with the moustache, with the wind in his hair, just bolts down the pitch. It's fantastic.
And now they've gotten over this hurdle, and it is a hurdle for them. We've talked about what happened in Adelaide a couple of years ago and what happened last year in the 50-over World Cup as well. They can start thinking a bit more about what's viable and possible for them come Super 8 time. With that bowling group to die for, the luxury to use Rabada down the innings and not needing to necessarily bowl with the new ball. The Janssen getting too early and grasping a terrific catch at first slip as well, diving away to his left with one hand. I mean, a lot of Marco peep show discourse going around on the Marco's got a chub on. We would have after that ball that knocked over Vikram, that went through the gate, swung late, swung at pace. So, they've got Janssen tall, moving the ball quick. Nortje, the aforementioned monster in T20 cricket. Rabada, Maharaj has barely been a factor so far, but we know that he can be. And Bartman, who has come from nowhere, virtually nowhere in international terms before arriving at this tournament and having 2 excellent games, conceding barely any runs and already taking 5 wickets.
Yeah, you've got a guy of the class of Lubni and Gidi, can't even get in the squad. Yeah. Andre Berger's travelling reserve as well. They've got a bank of excellent seamers and, like you say, complementary, different kind of styles. They can float in and out. match up whichever way they want to. I think this is the kind of result that no South Africans, none in the commentary box with me, none in the crowd, none back at home would have enjoyed that game. But looking back on it, it's the kind of thing you need to just get yourself up to match pace, to get yourself working as a team, I think. A tight game where you need to really be focusing. A bit of a clutch situation. The batters get you over the line. It's the kind of game South Africa lose, particularly against the Dutch. So to have got over the line in a game where it wasn't completely do or die, but it would have really, set the hearts a pace if they had lost. They now look into these final two games. They should probably win out realistically.
Yep.
And then it's a Super 8 and they can reset with a bit of, some match fitness under their belt, both mentally and physically. And I think this team can, if they'll go all the way, can really, really push the Wales to the final.
We talked about the pitch before. Another factor here has been the outfield. They are enormous boundaries, right? Like they're MCG plus somewhat. That's certainly how it feels to the naked eye. We can see the puffs of sand occasionally today. It's been very slow in all 4 games here. I mean, the Dutch didn't hit a boundary between the second over and the 15th over, with the exception of one Scott Edwards reverse ramp
what
6.
What a shot that was, by the way.
Only to get himself out, run out the next ball, taking on Aiden Markram, by the way. I mean, that felt like a really important moment in the Dutch innings, because if Edwards gets away, as we saw last year in the 50 over World Cup, they're probably defending 120, 130,
exactly.
And they're probably winning the game. So we shouldn't brush over that. But nonetheless, the outfield, there is still 3 more games at this venue. It's not getting any quicker. It'll absolutely be a factor. We heard yesterday Jeremy Gordon talking about the lengths he was bowling to take full advantage of the square boundaries. India-Pakistan tomorrow, the high-profile game. Your thoughts on that? Partly informed by, I think, how different it will be to what we've seen in India over the last 3 months with the IPL, where we were seeing 200 plus. That's simply not viable here.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's double-edged. Yeah, it's higher scoring, the IPL, obviously, with the impact player and the flat pitches, and everyone kind of high on the concept of high scoring. And this is nothing like that. However, given that slow outfield, it's very difficult to hit 4s. It's very difficult to Babar and Rizwan your way around this. It's not, skipping along the surface. You are going to need to clear the ropes if you're going to make the ropes, essentially. And so that kind of predilection towards 6 hitting, which has been, the meat and drink of the IPL for the last few months, may come to the fore a little bit, whereas PSL cricket has, obviously it's moved forward a little bit in the last couple of years. It has been much more high scoring, as has all T20 cricket. But that bank of players, with the exception of Thakur and Azam, really, and Ifti on his day, they are more 4s than 6s, and you wonder whether that's going to be an issue for them in this very specific context at this ground. I mean, in general, it's always thrilling to work on those games. I had the pleasure of being at the MTG last time. I can't remember if you were as well.
I did the one before that. I did 2019 at Dubai. Old Trafford. Oh no, sorry, a couple before that. The 50 over World Cup. Yeah.
I mean, they are. The T20 ones tend to be rippers. Like you got the 150 for none chase in Dubai.
Yeah.
The Ring of Fire. You had the Kohli innings last time out at the G. And these two do tend to live up to the billing in T20. ODI's not so much. And so it'll be cracking. It's going to be rammed. I'm going to have to get here about 5 hours early compared to Canada or Ireland. But that's no bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Ben, we've still got a fair bit to get through on the show. What I might do before going to the break is tell you about Westfield London and Westfield Stratford City. Father's Day is coming. And if you're also of the option that I just want the day to myself, is both selfish and inappropriate as a Father's Day gift, then look no further than Westfield London and Westfield Stratford City. Father figures are notoriously hard to buy for, so why not get them a Westfield London or Westfield Stratford City gift card? And if you buy the old man a £75 gift card, we'll throw in a Dan John cologne worth 40 quid. That's a bloody great idea. And if you're looking for a nice place to buy a card, well, we have them too. So let's just go back over that, shall we? If you buy a £75 gift voucher from Westfield for your dad, they chuck in a Dan John cologne worth 40 quid.
What a deal.
It's a pretty bloody good deal. Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City, dads smell, but they don't have to. Last point before we go to the break, and I think you and I are of a similar view about this, and I acknowledge that we do have a bit to get through with respect to the game last night, which was also very good down in Dallas. This might well be the best World Cup week ever. Now, had the Netherlands got over the line, I would be a bit more effusive about this, but let's rattle through it. Since the World Cup started a week ago, the USA beat Pakistan in one of the most thrilling games of T20 cricket ever staged. That's after they beat Canada on night one, hauling down 195, the vast bulk of it in the last 8 overs, with Aaron Jones making 94 not out, which we'll talk about forever. Canada beat a full member nation the next time they were up against Ireland, but it was the Jeremy Gordon psychodrama from the previous game, the melodrama, whatever you want to call it, the redemption ballad, that came to fruition there. The Dutch go ever so close to making it 3 associates, beating 3 full members in 3 days. But also Uganda enjoyed their first World Cup win. Namibia get up in a 10th super over. Scotland took 90 runs off England in 10 overs, albeit before a washout. Afghanistan annihilated New Zealand last night. The Nepalese crowd in Dallas a few days ago, which was absolutely sensational, where not a spot in the crowd was vacant because the Nepalese community turned out in force. And in the Bangladesh Sri Lanka thriller last night. Please continue while I cough.
Sorry, sir. What I was going to say was our friend and colleague Timothy Wigmore did a very nice tweet on this the other day, or last night I think it was, saying that this has been the first cricket event, not just the World Cup. First time cricket has felt like it's staging something genuinely global. I know we've talked about lots of teams and you can debate formats, etc. But just the actual fundamentals of this feeling like the whole world is watching. Now, whether or not that is borne out in the actual viewing figures, I don't really care. I just want to make it feel like my sport is big and matters. And I think one particular one in there, one result that you mentioned, it's not the sexiest, it's not the most interesting. The Afghanistan-New Zealand game last night. Now, in any other World Cup, Afghanistan slaughtering New Zealand is a huge story. Enormous story. It's the massive upset. It's these guys have come from nowhere and they've beaten the 4-time World Cup finalists or whatever. Everyone kind of broadly expected it. This is a brilliant Afghanistan side, and that speaks to what can happen with 10, 15 years of backing, of opportunities at world events, of talent, sure, and talent coming through, and talent should always be the one that's rewarded and supported. But ultimately, this is what the game can look like. It's teams who've come from nowhere beating teams who've been around forever, and the game feels so much richer for it.
Yeah, I mean, we criticise the ICC on this show a lot for various things, but going to this
100% right.
Yeah, going to the 20-team World Cup when it wasn't fashionable when they said it originally. When this was announced 3 or 4 years ago, people, 20 seems a little bit much. Now it's like, well, can it be 24 next time? Because the lived experience so far is your ranking has no correlation, with maybe the exception of Oman. They might be the one team who are 1 out and 1 back, possibly PNG, but we've got 18 teams who can beat 18 teams. Now that might be exaggerating it slightly. I don't think that Canada are going to beat India, but in grounds that suit where the competitive balance between bat and ball is closer, that kind of thing doesn't feel as outlandish as it might have been had we been talking 4 or 5 years ago. So well played on that front. Let's go to the break. On the other side of it, we go back to Dallas and then we go to the Final Word Hall of Fame. I need to have a drink, have a bit of a cough as well. I'm going to literally do that. If you're watching on YouTube, this is riveting stuff. Maybe because I went to the Yankees game last night and was up very late watching Hawthorn play as well. I'm not cutting this.
You're not cutting this?
I'm not cutting the YouTube bit anyway. This is going through.
Sorry.
If you're a YouTube watcher, find the highlights of the Hawthorn GWS game last night and see the amazing way that a bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-olds hung on.
This is a real insight into what it's actually like being
fucking job done.
It's great.
It is the Final Word, World Cup Daily, Day 8. We're still here at Ike Park. Adam Collins and Jonesy from CricViz. We saw another great game last night, didn't we? I watched the extended highlights because I was at the baseball, but they're quite useful, those long highlights the ICC put together. And it looked like an absolute belter. We saw Bangladesh get over the line by 2 wickets in a Dallas thriller. It looks every bit the early elimination final as well, doesn't it? Even though Bangladesh haven't played a game, the kind of odd way this group's set up, especially had the Netherlands won today, it does mean that Sri Lanka are in all sorts, and Bangladesh are already in a really good spot despite only having 1 win, because it could easily be those two competing for spot number 2 if the Dutch don't do well in their last 2 games.
It's interesting because I think that coming into this tournament, Sri Lanka were the team that everyone kind of had like a bit of a soft spot for, thinking they're pretty fun. There's all these slingers and wrist spinners and finger spinners and mystery. It's fantastic. They're really fun to watch with the ball. They're not very much fun to watch with the bat at all if you're a Sri Lankan fan. We've always said that if they're going to win games of cricket at this level, they just need to get enough. They just need to get 140, 150. The problem is they're not making that. They get 120 or whatever it is, and there's a sniff that they're going to be able to, that Pathan Nasanka's dragged them to something that's remotely like par. And they do kick off nicely with the ball. Nuwan Tishara and Dananjay De Silva get a few early wickets, and there's a bit of orthodox finger spin in there among all of the fun stuff. But Bangladesh do just have a bit too much in the middle order. They win is it 6 balls to spare, 2 wickets remaining?
7 balls to spare. I might have been 8. Sorry, no, whatever it was. They got deep enough that the game did have jeopardy in the end. Just to run through the particulars here. I mean, Sri Lanka got off to an absolute flyer. They were 53 for 2 inside the power play. Nasanka hit Shakib for 4 fours in 1 over.
And can I just say on that, Nasanka has been a guy who for a long time in Sri Lankan cricket has been since, like, super talented.
Yeah.
Really, really great guy. Better player in longer formats, perhaps, or has more potential. But he's always been a bit limited in T20. His power play game in the last 18 months has gone to another level. He's gone from striking at like 110 to like 130, 140.
Right.
And, you know, it sounds slim and, you know, quite boring. It's intent early on, yawn, T20 wankers. But it is essentially what takes you from being a okay player to being a really good player and an option to have a career around the world and to start starring on the world stage. So it's great to see him, you know, laying a glove on a World Cup group game.
And it took an excellent piece of bowling from Mustafiz, pace off the ball, caught at extra cover. But they still get to 100 for 3 before the last 5 overs. The problem there was that the arse fell out. They lose, I think, 4 for 24 or something like that in the final stretch. So they only set 125 for victory. But they got Bangladesh into a pretty good spot with the ball as well. They were 34 for 3 at the end of their power play. It took Bangladesh 30 balls to find the boundary. Then Tawad Hudroy hit Hasaranga for 3 sixes in a row. One of them over extra cover was pure filth.
Yeah, it was disgraceful.
After 2 over mid-wicket where he's hitting, you know, against the spin. I think one of them was a wrong one, but nevertheless, the one inside out was absolutely superb. It was a cameo worth 40 in 20 balls, and broadly speaking, broke the back of it. Looked iced, but they limped home. In both of the final stretches, they really battled. It was Tashara who took 2 wickets in an over, having taken 2 early on to keep Sri Lanka in the game. Tikshana took a tremendous catch down at deep third to get rid of Shakib. And then good old Mahmudullah, he got a full toss in the penultimate over, hit it for 6 and gets them there. So in the end, Bangladesh hold on, and good on them for it. But, you know, they were hard held. Sri Lanka have got 2 losses, and Bangladesh playing Nepal next. Now, if they get the job done there, they'll have 4 points on the board. With Netherlands, of course, ahead of them, and I think they play South Africa, my apologies, last in the group. So they might already have a spot sewn up in the Super 8s before they even face South Africa. That's possible.
It's a proper bun fight now. It's a real fight for that second spot because Sri Lanka have been disappointing. I think most people had them pegged as going through in second place with South Africa. And the Netherlands, whilst they didn't necessarily perform above expectations in the result today, they have played good cricket. They have been solid. All the things we spoke about earlier in terms of discipline and consistency, it means that they're always going to be there or thereabouts. I think any of those teams can beat each other.
Right.
Now, I think Bangladesh could beat I don't think they've got enough to beat South Africa, but I think Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, the Netherlands, they've got enough to all beat each other, which is what you want. If you're not going to have 2 teams running away, it's great fun to just know that Bangladesh are kind of clinging on, because they've not clicked really. They've tried to, but they've had this amazing T20 record at home, which has, you know, made them a really difficult place to go and get a result. But it's never quite translated into success on the global stage in T20 World Cups, more so in ODIs. And so I think maybe they do get underrated in terms of the threat that they do pose in certain conditions, because anything that is slower and lower, they've got a bowling attack that really knows what to do. The classic is Mustafiz, obviously, and he bowled very, very well yesterday. I think he went at 4s or something ridiculous. And
Taskin as well. Taskin's got a yard.
Yeah, he's a massive.
Got a real yard.
He's a proper T20 hipster's favourite as well, I think, in terms of guys that sneak under the radar and bowl 140.
Yeah, unlike anyone who's house up into as well, obviously. So
that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Massive. It's a bit like Shah Bakhtar's house. Huge pictures of himself on the wall, and all at his parents' house, of course. But still,
yeah, you'd hope so.
We like him on the final word.
Okay, I didn't realise
Hipster's
that.
favourite.
Great, yeah. I mean, join the club. But no, I think that both Bangladesh and Sri Lanka are quite likeable for that reason. And so I think what will probably happen. I know you slightly wrote them off earlier. I would say Sri Lanka will win out from now. And I think it will end up coming down to net run rate, which is good. That's what we like, because then it gets hairy about who's playing when. Everyone gets the knickers in a twist about who's playing before and after, who gets the advantage. Should we play every single game in the World Cup within 35 seconds of each other? It'll be exciting. It's going to be good. There's going to be permutation of his left, right, and centre, and that's what I want in a World Cup.
And also, Bangladesh had never made it to the second round of a World Cup, and by the second round, I mean like they've got to this point. But they've never made what was called the Super 12s last time. But you can ignore that. They've never made it to the elimination stages. I know it's a different comp this time, but you know the point I'm trying to make. They've always been eliminated when they've first had to play other full member nations. So that's not for nothing. Now we move to the Final Word Hall of Fame. So this is our first most final word moment of the day. I already mentioned that's for Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City. Ben, any thoughts on what you saw out there that took your fancy?
I'll throw in the Scotty Edwards 1-2 for summing up everything that's right and wrong with cricket. Of reverse scooping the world's fastest bowler for 6 and then getting barbecued by your partner. I think that's pretty up there for me. There was the enjoyable thing of the guy wandering behind the sight screen.
Oh yeah.
And then obviously lose the wicket. Batter waves him away. No, it doesn't matter. Gets bowled, wanders off, no ball, comes back. That again, enjoyably cricket nonsense. I think. But I'll go with Scotty.
I want to give a nod to the ground announcer here. I think I mentioned him the other day, but he's been really good at explaining what's going on. 17,000 people here today. I don't know how many of them are people who aren't that familiar with cricket, but you kind of need the assistance of someone who's doing the heavy lifting for you. So at one stage early on, Marco Jansen bought a massive no ball after taking a wicket, by the way. It was like a 3-incher. Anyway, and the PA guy got up and started explaining exactly what had happened, why it was a no ball, what he'd done wrong, why it wasn't out, what was going to happen next for the free hit. So fair play to him then. And also when Logan Van Beek bowled Marco Jansen later in the game, he went, "Logan Van Boom," which I was quite tickled by. Best atmosphere of the game for you so far? I thought better atmosphere than the India game.
Yeah, that's a fair shout.
It was really good today.
I was surprised by how many turned up, and I was surprised by how vocal they were. And actually, it was quite a nice even split of, I presume, neutrals and South Africans. Yeah. But it felt like there was a bit of to and fro. It wasn't that kind of... The thing with the India game was, whilst it was loud when India were doing well, when they weren't, it was dead silent, like we were back at the Modi in the final. So it was quite nice to have that like ebb and flow of a slight, a good crowd. In the spirit of things, it was a tense game, but it wasn't like everyone was stressing. It was just a good game of cricket in a nice place, in a lovely park, in America. We're in New York.
Yeah.
Let's just set the cricket off. I'm enjoying New York a lot. Let's just talk about Manhattan.
I think that the way this tournament is improving, and I said before how great the first week's been, but they're getting a lot right over here, and that's worth noting. I mean, it would be wrong to slate it because it's American. Like they've done well so far for the most part. Hey, how about this? I've been to Engelbrecht. How's this for a little factoid that I picked up off the World Wide Web today? When Australia played South Africa in a test match at Cape Town in 2009, everybody remembers that for the Bryce McGain test match, when sadly it went badly for Bryce. Lovely guy, was a great bowler, and sadly didn't quite work when he was playing his one and only test match. He was also the last wicket to fall in that test. It was a run out executed by the sub fielder for South Africa, Engelbrecht, as a teenager. Isn't that cool?
The Safa Gary Pratt.
Isn't that cool?
I like that. I like that a lot.
And this last thing, a nod to Dallas as a venue. That's been so good. That's their last game in Dallas today.
We've done Dallas. We truly have.
Cricket's done Dallas, and boy, we've had the USA with 2 hair-raising victories. Mentioned the Nepalese sellout, and last night watching those highlights, there were so many Bangladesh and Sri Lanka fans in there. There's a reason why they're calling that America's home of cricket. The investment's been put into that ground out there at Prairie. Long may it continue to thrive and more people get the chance to go there as we did last week.
Yeah, I'm sad not to have had the opportunity to go down. Lovely piece by Final Word adjacent Cameron Ponsonby on Cricket Info about that, about the home of American cricket. So yeah, go and have a look at that.
He'll be back. I think Cam's joining us for the pod. If not tomorrow, then maybe the day after. Actually, no, tomorrow it's Jeff and me. Tomorrow is India and Pakistan. Between times, you'll hear from Jeff and Bharat. England are playing Australia at the moment. No idea what's happening. That'll be a redundant comment by the time this is published in half an hour from now. This has been Ben Jones. I have been Adam Collins. This has been the Final Word Daily, Day 8, Part 1. For Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City, more extra, less ordinary. Catch you tomorrow.